Okay, the tweet is out. All right, now we're live.
Yay.
What's up, everybody? You already know who it is. Big Sto. Nora is that way. No, this way. That way. I don't know how this works, but she's over there. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm glad you guys are here. Yeah, Nora, what's good?
This is Office Hours. It's a space for artists to come. We have kind of different topics that we talk about each week, but really it's an open space to answer your questions and make practical, tactical, useful information available to independent artists. So we get into not just the what you should do or why you should do it, but into some of the nitty-gritty of how. I'm a creative consultant. I help artists achieve success without giving up their financial freedom, their creative control, or their personal integrity. I also run Culture Fix, which is a global network of artists and activists around the world who are doing good things. Sto is a writer, publicist, jack of all trades, also a hip hop artist, which Sto, you don't talk about enough.
Nah, because cats be getting all mad. How can you help me with your artist career if you're a rapper too? You're competition, bro. So yeah, do it all.
And so today we're talking about fundraising and funding and budgets and all that kind of stuff. So as you're tuning in, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the comments, tell us who you are and what you do, but also we'd like this to be a conversation, not just between me and Sto, but with all of you. So share your thoughts, share your questions, whether or not it has to do with the topic at hand today or not. So today we're talking about fundraising and money and how do you fund the projects that you want to do. And so kind of the first thing we want to talk about is this question of like, what is the first thing that you do? Hey, Candace, welcome. Shout out to Vinet. And yeah, so Candace says she's popping in. She'll watch it back tomorrow. So all of these episodes will be up online tomorrow. So you can come back to it, refer to it, share it with your friends, like, subscribe, send comments in the bottom. If you're watching this after the fact and a question comes up, feel free to share it in the comments. We come back and respond and answer to them. Kind of the first question is, what's the first step in fundraising? And the short answer to that is a budget. Put a budget together. Know what your plan is. What is it that if you're not clear on what you're trying to do, then you don't know what you have to raise money for. And so this is one of the things that I think is the most important thing, is to have your plan kind of figured out so that you're raising enough money, so that you're not sitting there after the fact like, oh, I forgot to put in a marketing budget, or, oh, I forgot to pay a graphic, I forgot to put money in the budget for a graphic designer. The plan, and I feel like Sto and I talk about this all the time, but having the plan and having the big picture figured out is always going to be your first step.
Right. Exactly. And I said this on Instagram the other day. You got to change your mindset. Like that. I genuinely feel like that's a big key in kind of taking those next steps. And damn, I meant to mention this earlier. Let me know how the audio sounds, because last time we had some issues and my voice sounded awful because of my headphones and stuff like that. So if you guys can let us know as we're kind of going through this, let us know. Anyway, with funding and stuff like that, it's about changing your mindset, because I think a lot of artists kind of enter the fundraising ring or whatever, kind of almost with this sense of entitlement to support. Like, okay, I'm making dope music, so you should support me. It doesn't work like that. You still have to. And again, it doubles back to our other episode. You have to think of yourself as a business. You're not giving to a business just because they look dope. You're usually suspicious. You're usually, asking questions and all this other stuff. People are going to do the same thing, with you as an artist when you're asking for money without really kind of showing something not necessarily tangible, but I don't know. You can't just go out asking for money while not appealing to people's emotions or appealing to something, anything. So I think it starts with understanding that you have to bring something to the table. Also understanding that you have to be patient, because we are in rough times right now. Not even just in terms of in terms of giving money to artists, but in terms of the fact that we're in a pandemic and all this jazz. Like people's money going to all different types of places. So keep all that in mind when asking people for their financial support and stuff like that.
And we'll get into the nitty gritty of like, how do you do fundraising? Because I think that's, a lot of people think fundraising is just like asking for money. But really,
Right.
at the core, fundraising is about relationships and getting people to trust you and continuously communicating with them, because what they're saying is that they're believing in you.
Right.
And there's some tactical things we'll get into. But the first step is really to have a budget. You have to know, what are you fundraising for and how much do you need? And I think sometimes people struggle with like the how. So what are some things, Sto, that should go in a budget?
Well, and again, to piggyback off of what you said, it definitely is good to plan in advance. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm a pro at this either. I'm still a person who is still learning how to be an adult entering age 30 or whatever. But, you know, when it comes to finances and stuff like that, you have, and especially with music, you have to plan multiple months in advance, especially if you're taking on something like an album and trying to push an album out there. That's a long process. It is not just, all right, hop in the studio, record the album, all right, album done, boom, let me get it out there, marketing, whatever. Do that in a week or two and all good. Like, nah, you got to sit down and plan not just graphics, you know, whether it's features, maybe you're going for features for a project, have money ready for that, marketing, which includes a ton of stuff, from ads on different social media platforms, whether you're paying professionals to help you craft a press release or an artist bio or a website or an EPK. All of that stuff requires a budget. If you don't, at least if you don't know what you're doing, and even if you do know what you're doing, you know, there's always little things that you want to, whether it's like a quality check or critiques and stuff like that on everything that you're creating. All of that stuff takes money. And so planning all of this months in advance, not just pre-album release or project release, but post-album release too. And then not even just post-album release. Some of you guys are trying to go on tour. How are you going on tour if you ain't got no money? Because here's the thing. Yeah, you're gonna get money from shows, but I'm gonna tell you this right now, straight up, because I'm a guy who used to be all-star at, oh my God, I can't wait for a festival to fly me out and pay for all my food and all my alcohol and drinks. And oh my goodness, I can't wait. Come to find out, not only are they not paying you, but they are sure as hell not paying for your entire flight. They sure as hell aren't paying for all your food. And they're definitely not paying for the luxury that you think you're going to have while you're out there. You got a budget for all that, bro. So again, it takes a lot of time to sit down and genuinely be honest with yourself, honest with the money that you're making, and honest with the money that you're going to have to spend when it comes to all the things that you're going to need for your project before and after release.
Okay, so don't let Sto freak you out, because I think a lot of what, so we're getting some feedback that your mic is staticky.
Okay.
Thanks, Serial. Serial
really
Sensei, by the way, what's up? So all that stuff that Sto said is absolutely right. And it can seem so overwhelming and kind of hopeless when you're like, well, fuck it, I give up, which is not the case, right? So step one, like, let's break it down into some like tactical things, right? Step one is to create a plan. And to Sto's point, you want to create a plan for the before, right? Like what your pre-production looks like. That's your mixing, your mastering, your engineer, your studio time, your graphics, like all of that. You want to create a plan for your promotional run, whether that's merch or ads or whatever it is that you need to put money into. And then you want to create for the post. What's the follow-up that you're going to do? Is that touring? Is that sending little creative packages to people? Like, this is where you can get really, really creative. Your videos, touring, merch, collaborate, you know, all those things that Sto mentioned. One thing that helps when creating a budget is, once you have the plan, go through the plan and take out all the things that you need to pay for and put that in your budget. Each of those things is going to be a line item, right? And you want to think about quantity. How much do you need? You want to do some research so that you know, like, what is the going rate for a publicist, or what is the going rate for a music video, so that you're making educated guesses, right? Rather than saying, oh, I'll just put $50 aside for a graphic designer, when really you might need to put out a couple hundred aside for a graphic designer. So use the plan that you've created to pull out your line items, put the price together, and then break down that budget into segments. You don't have to fund all of it. Maybe you just fund one music video. Maybe you just fund the merch, and then use the merch money to fund the tour. Maybe right now you're investing in streaming platforms and things like that. So breaking down what your budget is going towards is going to help make it much more manageable. One thing also that you want to think about putting in your budget is, I think people think about marketing. I think they think about like art, collaborations, things like that. But thinking about who is the support team that you need around you. Do you have a manager? You want to make sure their 20% is in the budget. Do you have someone who's your videographer? Do you have someone who's, someone at the door who's collecting tickets for you? That needs to go on the budget. So thinking about all the kind of accessory and tangential roles. And also there's a line item on most budgets, if you're not familiar, it's your incidental costs, things that you didn't foresee, right? That's like the Uber ride you had to pay your engineer because they were stuck somewhere, or you bought pizza for everyone because it was a late night and you're still in the studio, or, these little costs that still are that you can't foresee. You couldn't have predicted it, but that there will be costs that you couldn't predict. And so you want to put that in the line item too, in the budget too, so that you're prepared for those kinds of things, so that you're not scrambling. And then just as important as putting down what your costs are is thinking about what your projected income is going to be. And so whether that's what you expect to make off of streams, or whether that's how much percentage of your job paycheck you're going to put towards this, or how much you need to invest, you want to think about what your multiple income streams are going to be, and then compare the two budgets. I think one thing that I often see with artists is people don't have a sense of how much they're actually spending, or what things actually cost. And so I really recommend, for as long as you can, but at least a couple months before, keep a note in your phone or a page in your journal or whatever, where you write down everything that you spend. Like, you swipe your card, spend, write it down. You Venmo, write it down, where you keep track in one place. So you start to see where your expenses are going, so that you can figure out what in your budget can be adjusted or not. That's good for just life in general, but especially for these projects, because you do want to be able to keep track. Especially on Sunday, we had a question on Instagram about LLCs and different bank budgets and stuff. If you do have an LLC and you are filing as a business and you're filing your taxes separately, you want to be able to keep you have to be able to keep all your receipts for everything, so that then you can say, these are my business accounts, these are my business charges, this laptop I bought was not for me, it was for work, or whatever it might be. Yeah, so as folks are coming in, welcome. This is Office Hours. Send in your questions. Sto and I do this all the time to really support artists. So send in your questions, introduce yourself in the comments. Feel free to add your own advice or tips and tricks that are working for you. Serial Sensei says, save your job money well in advance, even before you start a project. Get ahead so you don't end up in the red later. And look, it doesn't have to be hundreds of dollars, right? $5 here, $10 here. These little bits add up over time.
Exactly. And that's honestly, again, as someone who is still learning a lot of this stuff on the fly, it really does not have to be hundreds of dollars. You would be surprised how even just throwing $5, $10, $20, whether it's once a paycheck, even once a month, it does rack up eventually. And kind of to piggyback again off of Nora, is that the fundraising and stuff like that, it doesn't all happen overnight. And saving money and all that jazz, it doesn't happen overnight. I understand getting the vibe of getting an idea and being damn, I want to execute this right now, I can definitely do this. I got it. But it takes time to execute stuff. It takes time to save up money. It takes time to rack all that up to then put towards an idea. So, be patient with yourself and be patient with the process, because it really is not overnight.
I want to get into some of the like practical tips about fundraising. So we have the budget, we know how much we need to raise. What are some kind of practical tips or tools for effective fundraising?
Right. And for me, one of the first things I like to look at is just look at what your skill set already is. Look at what you bring to the table already. A lot of you guys are already doing things outside of music that that you can use to service others. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but adding a dollar amount to that, like that is one way to fundraise. And and it helps you network and build connections at the same time. I don't know. There's so many different ways to do it, but we did talk about Kickstarter and stuff like that the other day, and I do like stuff like that and GoFundMe or whatever to get your finances up and stuff like that. But again, in cases like that, you have to make sure you have, reward's not the right word, but like if you have people giving incentives, there we go. Incentives for people that do give, because again, I know I keep going back to this, but it's a rough time right now. So any money that people are giving in some cases and in a lot of cases, it's I don't want to say a desperate amount, but like, they are giving out of the grace of their hearts or whatever. So coming back and giving them something that makes them feel like that money's going to a good cause is super important. But yeah, I'm not the best at fundraising. I really love the idea of taking the skill set that you have and using it to help others. But I'm sure, Nora, you have a ton of ideas.
I mean, just to that point, right? Saying, hey, I'm a graphic designer, hire me, versus saying, hey, I'm a graphic designer, I'm raising money for this thing, and so hiring me will help me do this thing. Even exactly. that framing shift makes people want to give, because they feel like they're not just getting, the design that they're asked for, but they're also contributing to something good. To get into the nitty-gritty a little bit, one thing to do is look at your network around you and do a little bit of power mapping or asset mapping. Sto might not be the person who gives me money, but Sto might be able to introduce me to 3 other people or vouch for me to someone. So really looking at who do you know and what are the asks that you can make from your network around you. That's one thing that's really helpful in terms of fundraising. The second thing, so can you hear that? There's like a clicky clacky. I don't know if that's on my end or your end.
It's probably mine.
Yeah, there it goes. So that's one thing, is to do some power mapping, do some asset mapping, and think about who do you know and what's the role can they play? Are they going to be advocates for you? Can they make introductions? Can they amplify your asks? Can they do like matching donations? Really thinking, getting creative so that you don't burn out your primary circle. So that's one thing. Another thing when you think about fundraising is that fundraising, and I said this earlier, is about relationships. And so you want to remember that it's not just, hey, give me money, thank you, bye, you're never going to hear me again. You want to engage your donors in the, Sal, I see your question, give me 1 second. You want to engage your donors in the process. And so let them understand the why, let them see the result of their work, right? This is a great time to make sure you have a newsletter so that you can say, hey, thank you for donation. As a result of your money, this is what we were able to do. So that they're not just one-time donors, but now they've bought in. One of the things we're seeing a lot in terms of fundraising patterns is mostly people think of like big donors, right? One time they give $10,000, they give $100,000. But now what we're seeing more is people who might only give $5 or only give $10, but they give over and over and over again. And those donors might actually be more valuable to you in the long run. Let me pull up this question. Saul Nuno asks, is it safe to assume that it's best to prioritize funds to things that can get you the greatest return? Merch, CDs, vinyl, etc. I would say to really think about it. It really depends. On one hand, right, if all you do is invest in merch, now you're a clothing company, right? But if you haven't built the other infrastructure around that merch, for example, or around the CDs, for example, then you're selling CDs, but you haven't figured out the infrastructure or the systems to leverage that into what the bigger goal is, right? So this is the part where having your goals really clearly figured out is important. Is your goal just to sell CDs, or is your goal to become like, I don't know, like an artist with a big platform? And so it's a little bit of thinking strategically about how are you going to fund the things that you want to do, but also making sure that you aren't just letting the funds drive your career. I'm going here because this is where the money is. Unless money is the goal, then that's a different conversation. So really, if you go back to the budget, here's my costs, here's where the money's coming from, what's the gap, and what are the opportunities to close that gap? It might be prioritizing those funds, but this means like you're not investing in things like marketing or promotion or collaboration or some of those other things that in the long run can be leveraged more. So I don't know what you would add to this.
Yeah. Also, let me check in with the audio again. Let me know if it's okay. I think I finally figured it out. Switch the chords around. Should be good. But you nailed the point that I was going to make in that if you're only focusing on the things like merch, CDs, and stuff like that, yeah, right, exactly. Like you're missing kind of the other portion of things like marketing, PR, graphics for flyers and stuff like that. So, and again, in cases like this, like if you can invest in merch, CDs, vinyl, etc., but if you ain't got the fan base, that money is literally going nowhere. So, again, it's all about balance and making sure that you're putting your money where it's supposed to. Again, it doesn't make sense to sell a product if you don't have people interested in that product. But that, again, plays into marketing and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, you really want to think about what's going to give you short-term return without losing sight of what the long-term return is. And this actually is a great segue into this other question around, okay, like what if you really don't have money? There really isn't a budget. What are the alternatives? What are some ways to get the things covered that you need to cover? And this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because the point of money is to say, I value you, I recognize your labor, I appreciate your work. I'm not entitled to you and what you're doing. So what we're really talking about is compensation. And that doesn't have to be cash. You can get really creative around what creative compensation looks like, what these alternatives can look like. So that could be things like bartering services. It could be trading goods. It could be some kind of service exchange. It could be, and that doesn't also, the other point is it doesn't have to be, when we're getting creative around these kinds of alternative value systems, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, right? I'll do this for you now, so you do this for me right now. It could be, hey, I'll do this for you now, and then you do something for me down the line, right? So you can be flexible with timelines as well as with products. But those kinds of exchanges of saying, look, I don't have cash, but I do value what you're doing, and here's what I can do instead. You guys, I ran a 20,000 person music festival with no budget. 2-day festival, 20,000 people showed up. I think I put over like 40 artists on stage, built everything from scratch off of service exchanges and relationships. The artist that I was managing at the time, we engaged, his fans showed up and were like putting nails in my stage the day of the event, and were like out flyering in the street for me. And so you can get really creative in terms of what resources you do have and how can you use those. And your fans are resources and your network is resources, but engaging them in ways that nurture the relationship.
Yeah, no, you you honestly nailed it on the head. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, again, a lot of you guys bring more to the table than just your art. And again, and it doesn't even have to be in music. I know Nora was talking about like her relationship with a yoga instructor and how they collab and stuff like that. And so anything like, and again, it goes back to the fact that we are in a pandemic and stuff like that. People are kind of looking for not only independent people to support, but alternatives to kind of the more, damn it, I guess, capitalistic side of things. So, you know, whether it's songwriting, whether you make clothes and stuff like that, all of that is stuff that you can bring to the table and offer if you don't have money and stuff like that. Now, obviously, you want to appeal to what the person actually needs and stuff like that. But again, that's a good way to exchange services and stuff like that. And again, build a relationship.
Which is also, if you think of it this way, right? This is now a chance to beyond just like, hey, pay me, thanks, bye, I'm never going to see you again, right? This is a chance to cross promote, cross pollinate, introduce your audiences to one another, right? So now this opportunity extends beyond just like money, right? Money is probably like your least valuable resource in some senses to thinking about other things. This also brings me to another one of my favorite questions. When people say, well, do it for the exposure. And which I'm sure those of you who are watching have probably heard this. Maybe you've even offered it like very well-meaning. And if you have, like, tell us your experiences with it. Is exposure worth it?
It rarely is in most cases, because here's the thing, is that in a lot of cases, someone that is offering that exposure, or I'm sorry, yeah, someone who's offering that exposure usually needs the exposure more than the person that they're asking. You're the one making the ask. And again, there's nothing tangible or serviceable, I guess, out of that exposure. We live in a social media age where if we really want to talk about the effects of exposure or whatever, you can look at any, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If someone was to tweet about you and post about you, the half-life of most of those posts are, at this rate, almost less than a fucking hour. So you tweeting out, and here's the other thing, is that the network that we're usually working with is usually smaller. Like, yeah, obviously, if Kendrick Lamar or something like that tweets out a name, people are going to immediately hop on. But none of us are like that. That exposure doesn't turn into anything. So that it's not enough to ask for someone's time and sweat and stuff like that just to put up, a post or a social media post. Now, it's one thing to be like, hey, like, I'll suggest you to XYZ or multiple people, artists, whatever. That's one thing. But even that's not necessarily enough, because it just doesn't match up. There has to be some kind of balance when it comes to stuff like this.
I'm looking at the comments, and
right.
Christopher Hearn says that's the worst. Serial Sensei says I can't even say what I want to say. I disagree a little bit with Sto's take on this. I think that some exposure, look, not all exposure is created equal. And so you want to, when someone says, well, do it for the exposure, you want to really look at what does that mean? And so some of the things to consider is, when they say exposure, what does that mean specifically, right? A tweet is very different than, a blast to a mailing list that has a 50% open rate of 1,200 people, right? That's very different. Or an introduction to some people might be more beneficial to you than an Instagram post. So thinking about what is that exposure? And when you are having those conversations, to have a very specific negotiation around what is the exposure, how long, what platforms, how will you be credited, in what context, like talk out all of those details and then put it on paper the same way you would if you were to have like a written contract around money. So that's one thing to consider, is like, specifically, what do we mean about exposure? The other thing to think about is that audience the audience that you want, right? If you're a vegan rapper and the audience is a bunch of like carnivores, maybe that doesn't make sense for you. Maybe you want to find something that's more aligned with your niche and your audience. Maybe it is. You get to make those decisions, but really thinking about, is this an audience that will benefit me? And then third piece is to be really strategic about how you leverage the exposure. Exposure is only going to get you a tiny bit, and you have to have all the things in place to leverage that exposure. So are you capturing emails? Are you putting out a call to action? Are you getting them to sign up for your mailing list? What is it that you want that exposure to do that's going to help you get to where you want to go or move you closer to your goal? And so exposure in and of itself is neutral. It's up to you to make it worth it. And you have to be, I think, specific and strategic about it rather than just broadly. The other thing I'll say, and I think this falls maybe in both categories around exposure and creative compensation, is you can ask for things besides Instagram posts or tweets.
Right.
You can ask for, well, hey, can I come back to this venue on another night? Or,
absolutely,
hey, can you let us use your financial sponsor to get a discount? Like, or hey, can you help us make a bulk order so we can get lower rates on our merch that we're purchasing? Or, you can get really creative. Can you share your mailing list? Can you introduce me to 3 other people? Can you put me on your next panel? You can get really creative. Because the thing about, I think a lot of artists, and Sto, I'm sure you've seen this too, who chase like a cosign. They want someone to put them on.
Right.
That means nothing as much as seeing someone get active behind you. Kendrick can tweet about you. That's cool. Maybe I'll see it. Maybe I'll get curious. But watching someone buy into you actually is more convincing to an audience. And that's a subtle difference, but a really important difference, I think, for folks.
And I do want to say, like, that's essentially what I'm saying when it comes to exposure. Like, if it's worthwhile and there's something that's actually going on and something that's active in that, like, absolutely the exposure is worth it. But I'll say 8 or 9 times out of 10, people say, yo, for the exposure, like, it's usually on some light stuff. So like Nora said, get specific, get super specific on what that exposure looks like. Because here's the thing. If you say that and you ask for specifics about exposure, most people will fold because they ain't got nothing to offer but a post, and they'll be like, yeah, man, I see this all the time. Yeah, man, I got 10,000, 20,000 followers, yeah. Like, that's cool. And that gets you in front of some people. But like Nora said, like, and especially if it's something like Instagram where you got to go through so many hurdles just to get to a damn link, that doesn't really do much for you. But again, if it's something like sharing with a mailing list or introducing to someone that's actually going to help you push forward and stuff like that, that's totally worth it. And again, Nora actually brought up essentially the next point I was going to make, which is don't chase a goddamn cosign. It's not as effective as you think. And like, just let that stuff happen organically and naturally. As you're working and as you're doing your best in pursuing your career, people will get behind you, I promise. Because here's the thing. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're posting on social media. I don't care if you're releasing a project. I don't care if whatever it is. People can see between what's genuine and what's fake. If you're faking the funk, they are not going to support. They're not going to back you. But when you're being organic and when you're being yourself and stuff like that, we said this numerous times. The biggest superpower that you have in all of this is being yourself. I'm telling you from experience, as someone who used to chase cosigns, like, it doesn't do anything for you. And even when you get, like, some of my favorite people in the world follow me, that doesn't make my checkbook any bigger. That doesn't help me lock down clients. That doesn't, like, it can help me in some networking opportunities, but them mentioning my name is not going to automatically cause me to blow up and stuff like that. It never works like that.
And that's the other thing is, like, fundraising, and I know we said this earlier, but I want to reiterate it, really is a form of relationship building. And so you want to think about what is And I don't mean to make it so like technical, but what is the long-term value of this person? Is it the Instagram post? Is it the paycheck? Is it the long-term relationship that we're going to build? Like, and so to think about it in terms of not just like cash now, switch, exchange, transaction, but who is this person? How do I fit with this person? And how can we support each other? Then you set up a relationship that's going to give you that long-term ongoing benefits, which feels a little counterintuitive, which is why you have all those other, you want to diversify the ways that you're making money and the ways that you're putting your stuff out there so that you can kind of play around a little bit.
And those relationships stack. You know what I mean? Like it's very easy to be like, and that's why I say don't zero in on one person because you're so busy focusing on this one celebrity. Please, I hope you pay attention to me. Meanwhile, you have 5 other, higher names or cloudy names or whatever that are already paying attention. You ain't even paying attention because you're so busy focused on insert celebrity here who, even if they give you the time of day, is not going to give you the result that you think you're going to get. That's pretty much how I feel about it.
So to wrap up for today, step 1, write a budget, have your plan ready, and itemize all the things that you need to fund. Step 2, figure out what the best fundraising strategy for you is, and that could mean getting creative, but it's definitely rooted in building relationships, identifying what your priorities are, and then giving people feedback opportunities so that they're engaged in your success, right? It's the same way we say, share your process as an artist. You want to share your process as a fundraiser, and to think about your first circle as potential ambassadors and advocates and not just the people that are going to give you money. And step 3 is to get really creative about what compensation can look like when you're working with other people, so that not everything has to be cash, but you can exchange services and support, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes if you choose, exposure.
Right.
So y'all, thanks for hanging out with us today. This has been Office Hours. I'm Nora, here with Sto. Please make sure you like, subscribe, send in if you're watching this after the fact and you like, oh, I want to ask a question or I have an idea. Please share those in the comments because we check those and we'll continue to respond to you. If you have other things that you want us to talk about, send those in the comments and we'll do a whole episode about it. Both Sto and I are on Twitter and Instagram. We're also available for consulting. So reach out to us because we're here to support you. We really want to see independent artists thrive and be successful. So thanks for hanging out with us. Subscribe, wash your hands, wear a mask, keep your social distancing. Anything else though before we wrap?
Nah, we really appreciate you guys coming through. We're almost at 90 subscribers, which is just insane because what is this episode? Yeah, episode 5. We haven't even been at it for that long, and you guys are coming through and supporting, interacting with us in the chat, and just sharing our content. We really, really, really appreciate it. But yeah, like Nora said, wash your damn hands, wear a damn mask. Don't you dare go outside without a damn mask. If I see you out there without a mask, I'm putting hands on you. Not really though.
Not really though.
So, but yeah, be careful out here. Keep your damn hands to yourself and respect everybody. Damn it. We'll see you guys soon. All right.
Thanks, y'all.